Well, hello everyone, welcome to my channel. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button if you want to get notified every time I upload a video. Anywho, in today's video, we are going to be talking all about books because reading to the mind is like exercise to the body. So one lucky winner is gonna win all 7 of the books that I'm gonna talk about in this video. I'm just gonna share some of my takeaways and just like little things about it that I loved. But these are all books that have really impacted my business, my life in terms of like self-development and growth. And I really think that that is so important to help us be more knowledgeable and just really help us be better at being girl bosses. So I've read other books, of course. These ones I feel like I got the biggest takeaway from. So I wanted to share them with you, and I wanted someone to kind of get all the feels that I got, all the motivation, all the inspiration. We have inspirational books, we have motivational, spiritual, all of that jazz. And then at the end, I'll be sharing different ways on how you can enter this giveaway. The first book I'm going to be talking about is called The Happiness Advantage, and I have talked about this several times over the last several years. I read this book probably 4 years ago. So I went to a leadership conference for Rodan & Fields, and I got to meet Sean Aker, who is the author of The Happiness Advantage and in a lot of other great books. But he studied positive psychology in college, and he wrote this book which really impacted my life and my husband's life. And I think that no matter what you decide to do, whatever you're reading all these books for, it's so important to just be happy. And so many of us nowadays, I feel like, aren't happy because we have social media nowadays and we're always comparing our reality to other people's highlight reel. And this book, I think, before you start reading any other business books, before you start trying to achieve any goal, be happy with where you're at right now while striving for what you want, because let me tell you, the grass is not greener on the other side, and you accomplishing goals, success, all of that does not make you happy. You have to just be happy. And the more you learn how to just be happy for having the life that you have, being alive, it's crazy how more great things happen to you. So it's all about finding gratitude. So if you want to find happiness, find gratitude. So one of my favorite activities in trying to, get back to being happy is the 21-day challenge. And I'm probably wording this kind of differently because, I haven't read it in 4 years, but this is something that I try to practice. For 21 days, I try to write someone a letter or an email or like a really thought out long text message thanking them for impacting my life. So I went down the list of people that impacted my life throughout my years, and I went back to writing the girl who got me my first professional job a letter or thanking her. I wrote an email to a lawyer that got me out of trouble, and had he not gotten me out of trouble, my life wouldn't be where it's at today. I sent a letter to the lady who gave me my first big makeup lesson because she's what impacted my livelihood. She taught me a lot about makeup. So I started thinking about what my life would be like without some of the people that have impacted it. And I just kind of went back from my past, and I just started reflecting on who really impacted my life. And so for 21 days straight, I wrote different people every day, and it just made me think about how happy I was and how grateful I was for them being in my life, because my life would not be where it is today had it not been for them, and I have so much to be grateful for. So what's great about that is when you do something like that for someone, it can actually make their day. I wrote someone thanking them, and they wrote me back and they told me that it couldn't have come at a better time because they were dealing with self-doubt, they were just going through stuff, and so that really helped them feel good, which in turn it helped me feel good. So I don't want to ramble too much, and I'm going to try to keep all of these short, but this book, I think before you start any journey in success and trying to hit certain goals, just make sure that you're happy where you're at the moment while you're trying to strive for those things that you want. So The Happiness Advantage really impacted my life, and I hope that whoever wins this, it will impact their life too. So the next book that I'm going to be talking about is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I came across Simon Sinek through one of his TED Talks, and I think it's just called Start With Why, so you should look it up. What I'll do is I will link down below in the description box his TED Talk that really inspired me to want to get his book. But I read this book 3 or 4 years ago while I was on vacation with Chris. We went to Europe for our 5-year anniversary. And I figured if I'm going to be going to the beach and stuff, I want a good book to read. And this was all before I knew I wanted to like really expand my business, but this was all before. And I really wanted to use my, experience and education that I've learned throughout the years through conferences and books to really help me expand, because I was so scared, but I just wanted to know as much information before I expanded. So anywho, obviously from the book it says it starts with why, and we all talk about what we want to do, and for me it's for business. We think about what businesses are doing, but one of the most important questions to ask yourself whenever you make new decisions or you're starting something is ask yourself why you're doing it, because when you know your why, it's so easy to redirect to the reasons why you're doing it when you're not feeling as motivated and stuff. But my biggest takeaway from this book was, so he gives a lot of examples from like Apple, I think Virgin or Southwest Airlines, one of them. Gosh, I think it's Virgin. Gosh, it's been so long, and I was like kind of skimming through the book, and it made me realize I really want to read this book again, because I feel like you can always have a different takeaway whenever you read a book multiple times. So one of the biggest takeaways I remember is they were talking about different companies, how they really hire their employees based off of their attitude and personality, not necessarily the skill, because you can teach skill, but you can't teach personality. And for our salon at Peachy Keen Studio, I thought it was really important that we had really great energy, positivity, because that's what our culture is all about. That's what Peachy Keen is all about, is positivity, empowerment, all of that. And so when Viv and I interview women, we really look for someone that has a personality that really sticks out from other people. It doesn't mean necessarily that they have to be an extrovert, but just even the vibes that we get from them, you know, listening to your intuition and how you feel from someone interviewing them. So we really focused on, you know, the personality traits versus the skill, because I could always train on skills. And same for her, she can always train the skill. So the next book that I'm going to be talking about is Girlboss by Sophia Amoruso. I hope I said that right. I hate whenever I say someone's name wrong. She's the founder of Nasty Gal, and she kind of just shares her journey to success in creating this multi-million-dollar brand. If you haven't heard of Nasty Gal, you'll have to check it out. She started from nothing and just kind of shared her story, and it was really inspiring. She even has a Netflix original series, Girlboss, but I didn't think that the show was as good as the book. Of course, the movies and shows aren't necessarily ever as good, but it was a cute show, so I definitely recommend watching it. So I have a couple takeaways from it, and she talks about her journey and some of the crappy jobs that she had, and also the ones that were great, and how it really made the good ones more meaningful. And it allowed her to have a diversity of experience for business. And if I look back at all the jobs that I have, even though they are completely different, I mean, I've worked fast food, I've worked in the service industry, I've worked retail, I've kind of done a lot of different careers, but I'm so happy that I got so much different experience because it's helped me for my business. Also, she talks about how this was back in the day, like whenever there was like MySpace and stuff. So she started her business from like eBay, and she was selling vintage clothing, and she just would make it look more high-end and sell it for so much more. So she was making great money, but she was utilizing her MySpace following to redirect traffic to her eBay. And so many people are doing that nowadays. If you think about it, I use Instagram as my main social media platform. I use it for my Peachy Keen Instagram. I use that platform to redirect traffic to my booking site to book appointments online, or to my website, or any classes that I have. I utilize social media for it. For my personal social media, I use it to redirect traffic to my blog, to my YouTube channel. Obviously you're watching my YouTube, but I do post on my Instagram first to redirect to that. So in this day and age, we have so many resources that are free that help us redirect traffic to wherever it is that we want to sell products. So if you don't use social media, you really should, because this is our future. Unfortunately, It is. Fortunately and unfortunately, because, you know, I feel like a lot of times we're glued to our phones and it's so hard to be present. However, the more you educate yourself on it, I think that it'll help you allow yourself time to be in the moment more and to meditate more and all that stuff. And because we're talking about all that, I'll go ahead and start getting into the next book. Alrighty, so I had to kind of take a little break and now I'm back. Okay, so the next book that we're going to talk about is You Are a Badass, How to Start Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life by Jen Sincero. I'm actually currently reading her You Are a Badass at Making Money right now. I'm just listening to the audio here and there, like when I do my makeup, so I'm not like really reading it. I read this last year, and so I got this book for my brother and another girlfriend for Christmas the previous year. I didn't buy it for myself, but I should have. But I try to like gift people with books for the holidays because I just feel like it's always good for self-development and growth and all that stuff. But I listened to a podcast last year called Earn Your Happy Podcast, and I'll link all of that below too because I think it's such a great podcast. Super motivational, super inspiring, by Lori Harder. And I know that she used to be like a fitness competitor as well. And she's always graced the covers of magazines like Oxygen magazine. So I used to always see her on magazines whenever I used to compete. But she does like a lot of motivational and inspirational type conferences or retreats or whatnot. But anywho, what I was trying to say is Jen Sincero was actually a guest on her show. And she was talking all about her book, and I just thought, like, I need to get this book. I bought it for people last year. I don't have it. So this was like, I think in December last year. I was just kind of like, you know, prepping for the new year and just trying to get motivated so that way I started, you know, feeling motivated in January. But I went to Half Price Books with Chris, and we just got like a bunch of books. Obviously, in the beginning of the year, we stack up on books so that we actually read them throughout the year. So that's what I did the other day. But we went to Half Price Books, and I saw this book along with like hundreds of others. And I mean, she sold a ton of these books. And so I thought it was like calling my name. It was like, read me. I'm just kidding. But I really did feel like it was just calling my name. And so I had to get it. And I'm so glad that I got it because it's such an easy read. And I love like an easy read because then I actually finish it in like a week. But it's just more of an entertaining style of self-development. It's very like tongue-in-cheek. But she talks a lot about meditation. She talks a lot about self-love and just really learning how to get your mindset right. And the biggest takeaway would probably be replacing your fear with faith. And when I look back at times when I did that, it's so crazy the miracles that, you know, happened. I don't know if you saw my video, how I got into the beauty industry, but in part 2, I believe, I talked about how we moved to Dallas and I didn't know anyone, I didn't have any money, and I restarted my business, and I don't know how the universe worked, but it did, and I believed in myself, I had faith, and I just told myself, one way or another, this is gonna happen. I have to. I mean, I don't know how I'm gonna pay my bills, so it has to work. So that was a time where instead of being fearful, I replaced my fear with faith. And when you just really believe it, even if you don't know how it's gonna happen, it's crazy the miracles that happen because of it. The next book is The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, A Counterintuitive Approach to Living a Good Life by Mark Manson. I read this with a few other girls, and I think the biggest takeaway, he actually has like a viral article, and I'll put it down in a link as well, and this is how I discovered him. I started following him after I read the article, and then I decided, then I decided to get his book because I saw that he was selling this book. But one of the things that he talks about is, you know, there's so many things that we want to do, and we sometimes fall in love with the glamour of it all or whatever. But the reality is that no matter what you're doing in life, there's going to be a struggle. And so instead of asking yourself what you want to do in life, ask yourself the question, what do you want to struggle for? Because all of the things that we do, there's always problems, there's always struggles that go along with it. But some people, when you're so self-aware of what you like to do, and you're so self-aware with yourself, you know what you're willing to struggle for. So it talks a lot about being self-aware and just really knowing yourself emotionally, what triggers you, all of that stuff, so that it can help you really find out what you want to struggle for. So For example, I used to do fitness competitions, and you know, I used to live, eat, and breathe it. I would get up at 5 a.m. every morning. I would run an hour. I'd go work full time, and then I'd come back home and I'd run another hour, and sometimes even do weights on top of that. So I was working out almost 3 hours a day, about 6 days a week. Now, for some people might see a fitness competitor, they see the glamour of it all. They see the girl on stage, they see the ripped muscles, they see all of that. They decide they want to do it, but then they realize they don't want to put in the work for that. They don't want to struggle for it. And that's okay. That just means it's not your calling. So there's gonna, and not that everything is physically as hard as that, but there are struggles or problems, or, you know, having to work hard for some of the things that you want. And some things will feel so natural because it's like what you're willing to struggle for. Years went by and I was doing that for so long that after a while it just wasn't, I didn't enjoy it anymore. And so I wasn't willing to put in the work to do, you know, to get on stage anymore. And so I decided I needed to hang up the heels because it just wasn't what I wanted to struggle for anymore. But just think about, you know, some of the things that people do for a living, and think about like the grunt work or the hard work that goes behind it. And ask yourself if you're willing to do that before you look at all the glamour of it all. But anywho, he talks about that. And he's kind of like cutthroat. Like when I read this, I felt like it was kind of like therapy. I didn't really feel like, I guess when I got it, it says the subtle art of not giving enough. And I thought that this book was going to be about not caring what people thought about you, because that's something that I struggle with a lot. And I think that social media has a lot to do with it. So I thought this book was going to be about that, but it was completely different. But it was still overall a really great book, because I feel like in order to do the things that you want and to do it successfully, like, you should really be self-aware. And oh, a big takeaway that I had from that also is sometimes we want to do things, like we want to work out, or we want to work extra hours when we feel like it, or when we feel motivated. And the reality is we're not always motivated. We don't always feel like it. So then what happens is we put those things on the back burner. So instead of thinking about your feelings, and instead of relying on inspiration and motivation, just start doing it, even when you don't feel like it. Because when you start putting in the action, you actually gain inspiration and motivation as you start doing it. So that was a huge takeaway. Even though I kind of know that, like, every time I do things that I don't really feel like doing, but I have to, I start kind of getting into it, and then it motivates me. It's kind of like whenever you start working out, and it's just not fun at first. It's hard, you're sore, it's not, like, you're not in shape, so it's just harder work. But then a few weeks go by, you get stronger, you're more in shape, you start losing weight, and you just start seeing that, and it starts to motivate you. And it's crazy how just taking that step of action really can help inspire and motivate you. So don't rely on motivation and how you feel. Just start doing the things, and the inspiration and the motivation will come after that. Okay, next. I don't have this book on me right now, but The Universe Has Your Back is one of my favorite books that I read last year by Gabrielle Bernstein. I actually first saw her on Super Soul Sunday years ago with, I think it was like an episode of like Next Generation Thought Leaders with Mastin Kipp and also Marie Forleo. And Chris and I used to always watch that show, and it was such an inspiring episode, and I started following them after that. I follow Marie Forleo. If you go to her YouTube channels, like I think she has like Q&A Tuesdays, which I always learn, and it's like super like 10 to 15 minute videos, and it's all for like business motivation and all that jazz. So anywho, I fell in love with Gabrielle Bernstein after I saw her on there. And one of the quotes from that show that absolutely, it's actually one of my favorite quotes from her, and it's, "Those who are certain of their outcome can afford to wait and wait without anxiety." For me, I just always remind myself, like whenever I'm trying to do things, like I remind myself, like, you can do this. Whenever you get anxious or whatever and you start doubting yourself, you need to know that you can do this. You need to have faith. And so I always try to remind myself whenever I get so overwhelmed or anxious feeling to be more like that. And that quote is just such a great reminder. You know, anything is possible whenever we really start to believe it and we tell ourselves that we can do these things. So those who are certain of their outcome can afford to wait and wait without anxiety. That is a great quote. But anywho, the book, The Universe Has Your Back, is just also about replacing your fear with faith as well. It talks a lot about like meditation. It talks about signs. It talks about when you are going through things during your journey of whatever you're trying to get done, there's going to be things that make you doubt yourself, that make you anxious, that make you so fearful. So one of the things that it talks about, even like all the bad things, the challenges that come our way, is just surrendering and just having faith. And this is more of a spiritual book. It's not a religious book, but it's so important to just have faith and to meditate and to just be in the moment, be present. And it talks a lot about how like what you project in your mind is what your reality is, which these are things that I kind of know, but it's like sometimes when they word it differently, it's so much easier to get a different takeaway and really remind yourself to be more like that. You know, like we attract everything into our lives. So the more you're focusing on something, the more you're putting more energy to it, and you're going to attract more of it. So if you're being anxious, if you're thinking about all the negative things that can go wrong, guess what? It's going to probably happen if you keep on focusing on it. So every time you find yourself thinking about all the negative things, thinking about what could go wrong, if that's not even what's going on, then don't believe it. That's everything that's in your mind, and it's make-believe, and you get to make believe whatever you want. Start believing the best for yourself. Start thinking more positive. Start having more faith and believing in the unknown, because when you have a mindset like that, it's crazy how many miracles can happen. So you need to start feeling it. You need to start visualizing it. You need to start replacing your fear with faith, all of it. But this book came at such a great time in my life. Chris and I were just going through a lot of stuff, not between us, but just, you know, facing some challenges that, you know, happen. And we would sometimes get on the road for like an hour and we would listen to the audio together, and I would just like pop it in because I'm like, hey, can I listen to this? And he would just, of course, listen to it because I was listening to it. And he's like, wow, this is really good. Like, I needed to hear this. So sometimes you'll read it and you can relate to it and you're just like, oh my gosh, they're talking to me. It's kind of like how some people feel in church too. Last but not least is the book, The First Steps to Wealth by Danny Johnson. And I don't have it on me, but I'll place the order because they don't have it at Barnes & Noble. It's called The First Steps to Wealth. So it's kind of like a finance book, but also relationship building. But my biggest takeaway from the book was all about relationship building and how to build relationships, because at the end of the day, people are more likely to buy from friends than from strangers. So it just helps you develop relationships. And when I first moved to Dallas, I really didn't know a lot of people. And this actually helped me make new friends. And it taught me how to really be more selfless in conversations, because I felt like before I used to always talk about myself, and I wasn't doing it because I was just trying to make it all about me, but I used to feel like if I just shared my story all the time with people, I was just inspiring people. And it's so important to listen and to truly get to know people. And not that I didn't do that. However, I learned so much more about being a listener and not always the talker. And that's hard because I'm such a chatty Cathy, but I try to remind myself that. And I want to have genuine relationships with people. And so this really helped me revamp my business whenever I kept on moving and I was losing clientele. Whether you're in sales or you're trying to build a clientele, I feel like this is such a great book. So here is how the giveaway is going to work. I'm going to be announcing the winner on Instagram. So you must follow my Instagram, and you must follow it in order to enter the giveaway anyway. So if you follow me on Instagram, head on over, and my handle is Chelsea Sanchez. You just have to follow me on Instagram. But I want you to go to the photo that I posted all about the giveaway, and I want you to tag a friend and also share one of your best practices for success. So I'll be announcing the winner 1 week from today. Anywho, good luck. Thank you so much for watching, and I think that's all. If you don't want to enter the giveaway, you can always just purchase the books, any of the ones that I talked about, or if you have any questions on them, of course, comment below. Thank you. Have a great one.